Okay, so now we get a nice handy sort of case study. These are the kinds of things you might read in business school, especially if you get an MBA. Details about actual businesses, problems that happen with these actual businesses, and then possible solutions. Ours, though, is focused a bit more on the, not a bit more, is focused on the ethics and the philosophy of it. But still, this is a real thing that happened. These are the real, accurate facts of the case. So a few things. Napster, probably, I would guess most of you have heard of, but the case happened a little while ago, so you can update this to many things still today. So I told you, I download stuff without paying for it, I'll admit. I've also lied to people before, so yes, I'm not ethically perfect. Sorry, what was my point? I got so distracted talking about what a bad person I am. Yes, you don't use Napster for this kind of thing anymore, but the Pirate Bay, I think, is something that I use. There's all these, I use these very sketchy Russian sites if I want to watch live sports and it's not part of my cable package, right? Now, a lot of us think, right out of the gate, we can say this. Okay, but what I'm doing is harmless. Right? What I'm doing is harmless. Well, Locke just wants to say, human rights are not strictly about harm in terms of, say, money damage being done. And they're not about harm in the sense of like, oh, the person doesn't like it. The creator or the athletes on these teams, one of my teams is the Oregon Ducks, right? And if I don't live in one of their markets, then I can't always watch their games, right? Okay, it's not like the head coach or the quarterback is going to say, oh, Chris didn't pay for the cable package to watch our games. They don't care, right? So yeah, we agree at that level. There's no harms done by this. But rights aren't about harms. So think about the right to free speech. It is wrong to stifle your right to free speech, even if what you're saying is factually incorrect. So people say all the time, I hate it, but I sort of love it. They go, well, why is the sky blue? This classic, why question. It's because the sunlight reflects off the water, and because the water's blue, that's the light it reflects, and so the sky is blue. No, that's not it at all. Okay, so first of all, that's just factually false. It's that the light passing through the atmosphere gets basically filtered so that you see, it scatters the light in such a way that what you see is the blue light and not all the other spectrums. Think about it. If the sky were blue because it was reflected off the light, sorry to get on my hobby horse here, but if the sky were blue because it was reflected off the water, then it would be different colors when you're in the forest because there's no ocean around you. I know you want to go, oh, well, the ocean's 70% of the world's surface or something like that. 3/4, okay. But you're not seeing the light from the whole darn reflected Earth. You're not seeing Australia's oceans. Anyways, it seems like it makes sense. It doesn't make sense. Also, try with your friends. Ask them what the phases of the moon are about. You'll get a bunch of hilarious answers that seem accurate, like the reflection off the water, but they're not. Anyway, sorry. I just got reminded of this the other day, and it's totally unimportant. The point is, if you started saying that to me and I or the government shut you down because it was false, we're not really doing you any harm. In fact, we might be saving other people from harm. That's not the point about rights, though. Okay, you have the right to say these things. Okay, think about hate speech, like neo-Nazis. There's some people who think that only, say, like Northern European races are real humans and everyone else is gross. And if they're not advocating violence, they're just saying, yeah, everyone else is scum. I mean, let me show you my arguments. I wrote a book about it. It would be wrong to suppress their speech, even though the speech itself is probably harmful, right? It's probably making people feel bad. It's definitely false, right? Some rights are not about how bad the thing hurts. Once more, let's go to property rights. It might be a worse version of theft if I steal $10 million from you. But if I steal $100 from you, it's still theft, right? Okay, so the fact that it's wrong is because it's violated a right. The fact that it's wrong is not about how much it harms or hurts somebody, but just there's certain things you can do and certain things you can't do. Okay, I don't mean to belabor or spend too much time on this point. Oh, belabor, that's funny because we're talking about Locke's theory of labor property rights. Okay? The point is this, is that if you think that things are only right or wrong when they hurt people, then one, you're a utilitarian, which is a legitimate moral stance, but it's not Locke. Second, you get into all these sort of, what do I want to say? You probably end up applying all these double standards because some people will say, hey, I downloaded Metallica's album for free, but it didn't harm them, so it's fine. But then if I came into your house when you weren't there and I looked around, you know, I pulled some books off the bookshelf, but I didn't harm them in any way and I put them right back where I found them. And then I left and and I used the same rationale. I said, well, I didn't harm you in any way. I didn't take any of your money. I put everything back where I found it. You'd probably, I would hope you'd say, yeah, but you violated my right to my own personal space. That's trespassing. It doesn't matter if you didn't steal anything. It's just wrong. Right? Okay, so this is the general point I want to ask you. And I'm asking myself as well. We seem with digital intellectual property right to have something of a double standard. And it seems like there's a bit of a double standard. If someone else did something to me that, in the way we're talking about here, violated my property rights, if they took a paper I wrote and said it was their own, or even they took a paper I wrote and said it was mine, but then made copies of it without my permission, or if someone read your diary without permission, they didn't publish anything, they didn't tell anyone else, but they went and they basically, metaphorically, touched your ideas without your permission. Or if someone came in my house without my permission, didn't steal a mug, didn't steal my $10 million that's under the mattress, just came in there and looked around. I think in all those cases, we would be very much with Locke and say, there's been a violation of natural rights. We have specific penalties for that under civil society. Those penalties need to be adhered. Justice must be done. Okay? That's what I think. Maybe I'm wrong. But when I download Kanye's albums, I don't feel bad at all. Mostly. I mean, part of why I teach this is I think there's something wrong about it. Okay? Well, that's exactly what I mean. I do it knowing that it's somebody else's property, which maybe not all of you realized before. But I also do it knowing it's someone else's property and believing that it's wrong to steal other people's intellectual property. So there's probably lots of ways to answer this question. One is simply, yeah, it's a double standard, right? I'm just trying to save a buck or two. I'm doing that by stealing. Maybe it's better than other kinds of stealing. Like I'm sure Kanye would rather I stole his albums than stole Kim Kardashian's diamonds. But still, he didn't give me permission to do that. And just like reading his diary, it doesn't really hurt his bank account if I'm not going to buy those CDs otherwise. Or download them, like pay for them. But it's still wrong. It still violates like his personal sense of control. But I do it anyways. So one answer is to say it's a double standard. If Kanye did that to me, if he downloaded my papers without my permission, and looked at my research notes without asking, I'd feel violated and I'd want something done about it. However, I'm willing to grant that there might be other things behind it. Okay? In fact, the question is this. The detailed question is this. What other than double standards might be going on here? So if you think it's a double standard, I guess you can say that. Fair enough. But don't make that your whole post. Because even if that's what's going on, that just sounds like normal, crappy human behavior. Not very interesting. Even in ethics course, it's too common to talk about. So if you think it's just that we're applying double standards, feel free to mention it, but make sure you add something else. So what else might be going on here, right? What else might justify activities that, if you stop and think about it, are just like going to a bookstore and writing down every word in a book in your own book until it becomes yours. Not theft in the sense that like the bookstore lost a book, not harm in the sense that the author lost royalties because evidently you don't have enough money to buy that book anyhow. But still, you think if the author saw that, they'd be mad? Yeah. You think they'd have some legitimate reason to have a grievance? Yeah. Okay, so what else might be going on here? Okay, that's the specific question. Okay, now to some nitty-gritties from the reading. Napster was a company that worked actually a lot like the file sharing services of the day, just with slightly different technology. Point is basically this. Person A has music in their possession somehow. Okay? They upload it to something else, decentralized servers, in a way that lets other people access that music or movies. That's what it typically is music or movies. So that person can download it to their own computer. And the way these BitTorrents work today is that they're a lot faster because the technology is smarter and pulls a little bit from everybody's computer, maximizing the speed rather than all of it from one person's computer. But tech stuff aside, the ethics of it is the same. If someone gives something to someone else that isn't theirs to give. Okay? So specifically what this does, this is a key term. Okay, this is the theory bit, or like the knowledge bit you definitely need to get from this reading. Physical property requires control of the person who owns it. Okay, for you to get physical property, the control of the person who originally owns that property has to be present. So, of course, for Locke and for everyone else, you can buy and sell property. I buy a car, 5 years later, I'm tired of driving it, I can sell it to you. I could give it to you if I want, right? But choosing to sell it or give it away and what price to sell it at, those are all things that I choose with my freedom, or in this context, my control. You don't get to come up and tell me what the price has to be. You don't get to come up and tell me I have to sell it to you. You certainly don't get to come up and say, I'm going to drive the car until you sell it to someone else. Okay? So here's the thing that's most important about physical property. Go back to Locke. Physical property is like your body. Oh, sorry, I should have added this. Intellectual property is like your mind. That's why I say it's like reading your journal. If someone takes your physical property, your movie or your music or your journal, without your permission, even if they don't make money off of it, even if you don't lose money off of it, it's like they touched your soul or your mind without asking. It's like they used you, even if they didn't make any money, even if you didn't lose any money. Same thing for physical property. If someone uses my car without my permission, and they even fill up the gas tank higher than it was before, I've not lost anything. I've not been harmed in any way. However, they have in fact violated my control. It'd be like if I took your body and kidnapped you and then made you go work in some factory, and they paid you really well in the factory. And I said, hey, don't worry about it. Don't worry that I kidnapped you and assaulted you, because you benefited. The job you were at before didn't pay next to anything compared to this. And you say, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. Because you want to control your own life. Think about it. This is part of why y'all don't like homework. It's not because you don't like learning, because you don't like being told what you have to do with your time. Fair enough. Fair enough. On that point, I'm totally sympathetic. That's what control is control over your stuff, that you have the final say, the only say, in fact, over what happens to your body, over what happens to the products of your mind. So when Kanye spends however much time in the studio, or Metallica in the case of the reading, Doesn't matter if it took them 1 day, 18 months. It's that they took time of their own, irreplaceable time of their own. Blood, sweat, and tears, as they say, because it takes work. And that's something they generated. Doesn't matter how good, how difficult it was to make, how much money it cost to make it. It's that once they made it, they ought to have full control over it. And if you touch it without harming it, you've still violated their control. If you make a copy of it, but we're never going to buy it anyways, and so therefore they didn't lose any money when you copied it, you still violated their control over it because they never gave you permission to make that copy. Just like you never gave someone permission to use your paper, you never gave someone permission to read your journal. See how nicely it all comes together? It's all about control. It's not about lost royalties. It doesn't matter for this argument if artists can make more money today off of t-shirt sales than they can off of CD sales. Right? All those things are real facts, but they don't touch on the particular ethical matter we're talking about here. Once more, if I forced you to move to New York City because the wages are higher there, I know that's outlandish, but let's pretend it could happen, and you made more money, you still, your freedom or your control over where you move your own body, your original piece of property, would have been violated. Let's put it this way. If the government made you take certain jobs because they knew it'd be better for you, you'd be PO'd about that, right? Even if you were making more money, even if they were right? Yeah. Okay, again, I'm saying when we look at the arguments, they sound pretty appealing on the artist side that they can give their music away if they want, but you cannot take it for free without their permission. Point being here is control and permission, though. It's not about free. Isn't that weird? It's not primarily about it being free. It's about control and permission. That's why in the article, okay, Delfino, the author of the article, he's a Metallica fan. He likes these guys. But he's also a philosopher. So philosophers put truth before fandom in this case. Truth before friendship even. And he says, he admits, Metallica did not make very good philosophical, ethical, legal arguments. Lars would say it's not about the money, then he'd say it's about the money. I'm telling you what Locke says, and I'm telling you, as Delfino did, the strongest argument is this. It's not about the money. The strongest argument is that an artist, regardless of how much money is made, lost, or neither, has absolute control over their property, meaning that anything done with it requires the permission of the artist. And this isn't just some wackadoodle idea that Locke had. It is in the front of nearly every book you buy. I've got a philosophy book here handy. Not our textbook, it's another one that's closer to hand. And it says all these things about who controls the copyright, who did the translation, the name of the publishing house is Vintage for this one. It says that's a registered trademark. That's about copyright as well. Okay. It gives you all the official stuff. Okay. It tells you how much you can quote in some of them if you review the book. All this stuff. So this is not just Locke's idea. This is actually how property law, including intellectual property law, works in the United States. An artist can. DJ Khaled did this the other day. You can give your music away for free. I mean, I don't remember how long ago this was now, but at some point DJ Khaled had a new album out. And he played it live before it was released for a bunch of people. As like a promotional thing. Same thing. If Radiohead, which they did, wants to give away their album and say you can pay whatever you want for it, including $0.00, they have the choice to do that. Just like I have the choice to give my dear mother a mug from my travels if I so choose. But you have to give them the opportunity to choose that. You can't say, well, Kanye's already rich. Or I wasn't going to download it I wasn't going to pay for a Tidal subscription anyhow, so he's not missing any money. He wouldn't be missing any money if you socked him in the nose either. it still would go against his permission or control of his own body, and that's where the harm comes in. Not the pain or the loss of money, but the loss of control over your own stuff. Okay. So a few more things I want to say about the article. I don't want to say ignore near the end where Delfino quotes another author who says, hey, if you take this intellectual property thing too seriously, pretty soon you're saying I can't sing along to songs. His example is that you maybe wouldn't be able to play along or play the song in the basement by yourself. Okay. First, Delfino is quoting that author to say something different, to sort of disagree. Second, that's not actually quite how intellectual property law works, but it's partly it doesn't work that way because we do allow in the general sort of federal law of intellectual copyright for certain built-in standard uses. But we do that because we chose to, and it's something we as a nation think is good. So for instance, your professors can make a certain amount of copies of books. Usually it's about a chapter or not more than something like 25% of the book, and hand them out for free to the students because it's for education. You can also quote at length from books if you're reviewing them in some sort of, you're reviewing a new novel in the art section of the newspaper or something. Or Pitchfork can put a clip up of a song if they want without permission, and that's fine. Same thing, the radio doesn't have to ask to play artist songs, but here's the catch. They don't have to ask because there's a general contract that covers all radio stations and every music publisher in the nation. This gets very complicated very fast, but if you're interested, I do like talking about this stuff, so email me. But basically, there's a standing contract that you get to pick one of two companies to to work with, and that radio stations write down every song they play. Then what happens is those two companies go out and collect royalties on behalf of the songwriters and redistribute them. So the radio doesn't have to ask to play the songs in advance, but they do have to pay to play those songs. Now, that's not a natural right any more than it's a natural right for you to listen to Kanye's music without asking permission. But that's something we as a nation, through consent of the majority, have written into our legal code. So you do have some rights that we've decided on as a nation. You can make a copy of a CD or you can make a copy of digital files so that you can have the same album you paid for on your iPhone or your Samsung or whatever, and your computer. You can listen to it in your car, at a friend's house, at loud volume, at small volume. We said, hey, the artist gives you automatic control and permission to do all those things. No questions asked. But same thing, the standard contract, what you sign up for, whether you realize it or not, is that you don't have the right to make a copy and give it to your friend. Now, you may not think that it's wrong to do so, but in America, we abide by contracts unless there's something really weird about the contract. So same thing, you buy a Diet Coke, you can use it to water your plants, you can drink it, you can store it as a souvenir if you want and sell it many years down the road for much more money. All those things are sort of built into what you do with it. But you can't then draw the Coca-Cola label into your computer, print it out and start covering your own soda with it or your own car with it, however you'd want to do that, who knows. Because that's not covered by the implicit contract, because that would violate their control over their own image and designs. So the details of copyright law get very interesting, but very complex very fast. The basic thing is we do have laws covering these things, and they're rooted not in Kanye's greed, even though maybe he is greedy. They're rooted in the same reason that when you get a paycheck, I'm not allowed to come by and take it. When you have a property, no matter how worthless or high in value, I'm not allowed to touch it without your permission. So there are good reasons behind all of this. Okay. Two more things I want to add. One is quickly that section about the Constitution in our reading in Delfino. That's actually an alternative. It's also in the law of the Constitution, just like property rights are, but it's actually an alternative. It is based on utility, as a matter of fact. But what you'll notice is even there, this is the origin of patents and copyrights. The resulting effect is still that we retain patents and copyrights because they do such a good job for both artists and consumers both. So here in a nutshell is the argument, and then we'll end with a question. That copyright and patent section that quotes the Constitution towards the end of our reading says this. It says, it's good if there are new inventions, that'll be patents, and new art, that'll be copyrights. It's good to have art and inventions. Then there's a second step to the argument. Well, it'd sure the heck be better if there were even more new inventions and even more new art. Right? This should sound utilitarian. Art and inventions cause pleasure. More art and more inventions would cause more pleasure and therefore be better. Third step to the argument is this. If you can motivate people to make inventions and make art, then there will be more art and more inventions. Therefore, life will be better. Okay, so we've moved from art is good to more art is even better to therefore we should motivate people to make art. Okay, now on to the fourth step. The fourth step is one way, surely not the only way, but one way to motivate people to make art or inventions is to show them that they can make some money if they make a successful artwork or invention. Fifth step is you say, patents allow people who make the invention to make money every time someone uses the invention. Copyrights allow someone to control and make money over who buys and sells copies of their artwork, and therefore they can make money if it's a popular artwork. This is how philosophy and logical argumentation always works. It's always as logical and straightforward as this. Now we add up each and every one of those things. We say art is good, more art is better. One way to motivate people to make art is to show them that they can make some money if they make good art. Patents are a way to show people, to promise people that they will copyrights are a way to promise people and show people that they stand to make money if they make a successful piece of artwork. Therefore, if we protect people's inventions through patents, patent protection for inventions, and if we protect people's intellectual property of artwork through copyrights, then you are slightly more likely, because it's a motivation, to have slightly more artists and slightly more inventions. So it's not a guarantee or anything, but the odds are pretty good. If you have more inventions because of patents, and if you have more creative artworks through copyright, then you have more good things. That's better. Therefore, we should and do protect and enforce patent and copyright law in the United States. And patent law is crucially important for medical drugs, which when you're sick, I think you're very glad that someone was motivated through the profit motive to invent a new drug that maybe saved your life, right? So a few things here. One, this has nothing to do with Locke's argument that we've spent 2 days building up to. Okay, so don't get them confused. This is a standalone argument. Another way to put this is the thing in the Constitution about patents and copyrights that we just discussed is about utility. Very straightforward. Locke is no utilitarian at all. Okay. Second point is even through utility, it still justifies protecting copyrights. That is, letting artists buy and sell their artwork as they see fit, and you and me not stealing it. Oops. Right? Okay. So, final point, which is a question. And this is one of my favorite things about this topic. Because I sort of feel bad, okay, I'm downloading this stuff, it's probably wrong. But also, me saying it's wrong doesn't really motivate me to stop, and probably doesn't really motivate you to stop either. So now I want you all to be very, very creative. Okay, so the question is this. What might we do instead? What might be an ethical way to move forward? What might be a way that would have legal and social, not impact, that's not the word I'm looking for, that we could implement socially and legally, that would make some sense to us here and now? What's the way forward? Because you've noticed artists are already adapting. Most artists don't complain about this anymore. That's probably because they don't see how they can fix it, more so than that they think it's morally acceptable. So basically, there's a chance that you and I are living off of artists and forcing them to act differently so that we can get free music and movies. I don't remember the last time I paid for a DVD, that's for sure. Okay. So what could we do instead that would still allow you and I really open access to art, but would also make it maybe more fair, more equitable, at least return some money, or, totally different, a feeling of control to the artist? So there's two ways that you can respond to this question. Well, maybe there's more than two, but this is the way I see it. One thing is that you can come up with your own scenarios where you think we somehow either preserve rights, or we preserve different rights, or we move to some other system that's going to satisfy everyone. So if you can dream up a new way to do this, that would be really great and really cool. Another way to do it is share with me and share with us ways that we are already developing existing things to try to make this more fair. Okay. And remember, it could be more fair on Locke's grounds, or probably it'll be more fair on some other ethical, legal, political grounds. But basically it seems Locke still applies to intellectual property, don't get me wrong. But we might want to rethink the system because the Locke form of justice is going unpunished, right? I mean, I'm an ethics teacher and I'm not respecting what I say are property rights of others. So let's try to think of existing ways that might be the sort of things where everyone's rights are respected, or everyone benefits, or pick your principle, but that lots of good things come about. So how do we fairly view and consume artwork where it's fair for the artist and it's fair for us too? With that question, we'll end today's recording. Thank you, everyone.